Welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. I'm your host for this session. I'm Sean.
And I'm Kevin.
And together we're going to talk about a unique problem that you might be having in your sales process, in your sales world. This 15 minutes is designed for salespeople, sales managers, and CEOs of the company that are trying to increase their revenue and trying to be more productive in your sales processes. So let's get started.
Once again, we have Chris from 360 Consulting down in Dallas, right, Chris?
Dallas, Texas, brother.
There you go. So Chris, last week when we were on the podcast, you mentioned a little bit about how good your companies were in the past when you were in W2 world on taking care of your existing customers. And we talked about maybe going old-fashioned and keeping track of customers and reaching out to customers and talking to customers. And I find that the good old-fashioned way of just reaching out to my existing clients and setting up a meeting and trying to understand what's going on in their world, how their business is changing, what are the challenges they're fighting. It just opens up so many more opportunities for myself and for my clients when they start really digging into those questions and those concerns. How are we treating you? Those types of things is just so productive for them growing their business with those clients. Really interested in what you might have to add to that conversation and growing customers that are good customers, but not great customers today. Maybe they're bad customers or not so good customers, and we want them to be good customers.
I think that's a great point, Sean. And so I think it starts with, first of all, you have to truly know what a good customer is. So I believe it starts with defining for a business what your ideal customers are. What are those characteristics and what are not? Because I find businesses sometimes have a misconception about what is a great customer. Just because it's a high revenue customer doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great customer. And then I would go back to the things that I use in my corporate life, where we've been able to do a lot of that in our consulting life with the clients we work with today. And that's have a process and have a format, have intentionality. Whether you're using a quarterly business review or some kind of a business review format, whether you're just really road mapping out that conversation and doing pre-call planning and being intentional about the conversation. I tell clients that if we're going to go visit a customer, we're going to be intentional. We're going to have a plan. And we're not just, hey, we're popping in and we're just checking in. Well, no, we're not just checking in, right? Because ultimately, if you have a really good plan, what does every customer want to talk? They want to talk about their business, right? And themselves. And so let's let them do that. Let's figure out what is the right conversation to have, whether you're bringing data in to share with them about the interactions that you've had with them. Maybe you've had problems. Problems are great, right? Every problem is an opportunity with a customer, depending on how you handle it. Some of the best customers that I've ever had, whether it was me personally or whether it was clients that I've worked with, are the customers that we've had big problems with. And because of how we've handled those problems and worked our way through them, those relationships become very deep. Conversely, customers that you've never had a problem with, sometimes all of a sudden go away because they don't know how you deal with a problem. Your relationship isn't as rich. Maybe you weren't visiting them as much because you didn't have a red flag or some kind of a fire to put out. So I think that intentionality, no matter what you're doing, whether it's a more formalized business review process or if it's just really having a pre-call plan, but have intentionality about those interactions, because often you're going to find that there's more business to be had. There's deeper ways to build those relationships. And if you go in with that servant kind of heart, where you're really talking to them about their business and truly trying to understand it, they're going to want to talk to you more. Whereas if you go in and you're just talking about what you do in your business and the things that you're doing for them, it's probably not as meaningful. So it's different for everybody, Sean, but I think you need to have a plan, right? Don't be willy-nilly. Really be buttoned up and use every customer interaction as an opportunity. And that intentionality, I think, is critically important.
Yeah. You said something there, road mapping the conversation. I've seen you do this in real time, but for somebody out there listening who might be new to sales leadership or somebody who may be looking for someone to lead them on that sales leadership journey, what does that look like? How do you get that process started with your clients?
I have a great story to tell if you'll allow me. I had a client, a manufacturing client years ago. And the first time that I met them was like, we need new customers. We got to grow. We used to be X 70 million and now we're only 42 million or whatever. And so as I went through everything, I realized, I mean, gosh, guys, you already have all the customers in this business. So what else can you build? What else can you manufacture? How can you use your current operation to build stuff for different customers? And what would that be? And who would those customers be? And they were like, yeah, we don't know. And so as I started to dig into their customers, I realized that there was a lot more business within that customer base that they could capture. So I said, hey guys, let me ask you a question. If you could get all of your growth and never add a new customer, would you be okay? And they were like, yes. I said, okay, we're going to go about that. So ultimately what had happened to them is there was an intentionality. When they got an opportunity to try to win business, they were just focused on solely on price. They really didn't even understand their margins well enough to know how to negotiate on a fractions of a penny. They were guessing and making mistakes. And so what we did with those guys is we just basically went back to the basics and we started going in and doing business reviews with their customers, understanding not just the buyers, but the engineering departments in their customers, their manufacturing process. They had this magic in their business already. They just weren't leveraging it. And so through that process, we took a company that was going like this and we put them back they got back to their pretty close to their highest revenue levels, even though they'd lost one major clients to overseas manufacturing that they weren't ever going to get back. So, sometimes it's okay to not add new customers. You need to look at the business and say, what's the most important thing? And for that company, it was really that intentionality. It was understanding what was motivating not just the buyer, but also what were the higher levels within those companies. We used to say we're going to get off of the concrete and we're going to get onto the carpet, right? That was our plan there. We got out of the concrete floor onto the carpet floor with their engineering and their upper management. And that business review process was extremely helpful because we learned things that we didn't know. And we built relationships that had been torn apart or weren't even there. And we built a contact hierarchy for that business. And so we were working up and down the food chain and across the food chain in those customers. And it made a huge difference. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but that's just an example.
I think that's a great example. And actually, the whole time you were telling that story, I was thinking of one of my clients who's a contract manufacturer, and they have a who's who of customers already, and they get whatever, 0.5%, 1% of the wallet share of that company. And I'm like, guys, you don't need to prospect anymore. All you need to do is get closer to your clients, know what they do. I like how you talked about moving up and down, getting onto the carpet. That was a great analogy. That could be a little scary, though, for a salesperson. Let me describe a salesperson for you that was really good at that old way of I'm just going to be a 0.5% of the wallet share kind of customer. And that salesperson's good at replying to requests, answering questions, whatever. And now we're asking him or her to move up the food chain. Let's go talk to that VP of manufacturing. Let's go talk to the VP of engineering. They've never talked to that person. How do you help a salesperson grow personally so that they're comfortable making those more business conversations as opposed to the transactional conversations?
Well, I think that it all depends on the salesperson, but I would tell you that if in those situations, I'm going to go back to ways that you can use discovery questions, even though you might not be in acquiring a new business or a new customer. I would go back to those things. What do you need to understand about that role and that person? What's their motivations? So we use buyer personas as an example. The business has a reason that they're buying from you, but individuals within those businesses have different motivations, different pain points, different reasons that they're looking for support and help from their vendors. And so I would take those roles within a company and help the salesperson understand how to have that conversation and ultimately role play through that so that they get more comfortable doing it. And it's not uncommon for me even in my consulting practice to jump on a Zoom call or something with the salesperson and help them. Fortunately for me and for you guys, we've been in so many of those conversations that you can't put us in one we probably haven't been in before. So oftentimes, if you can give that salesperson kind of a real world example of how to do that, then they can go learn from that and be more confident. And it's really about confidence. I mean, if you're confident and you're comfortable, those conversations go great. So I really work with those salespeople to learn the things they need to learn, role play those things, participate with them or have them participate with someone else in the business who's already comfortable at that level, and then come back and then let's download and let's relive what happened. And so that coaching in real world context, I think, is how you get people comfortable with it.
That's fantastic. So, Chris, there's some things that are just violently running around my mind right now because you have sparked so many ideas here. I thought about my first example of being pushed into figuring out how to communicate more effectively. So if you're a salesperson out there in the market going, okay, well, how do I get started? I'm going to challenge you, salespeople, sales leaders, to invest a little bit of research in yourself. Go look up the term PESTLE, P-E-S-T-E-L. It'll teach you what to look for politically, economically, socially, technologically, environmentally, and legally in a business. Understand their business. If that is too scary of a moment for you, go look up the business canvas. Go figure out how your customer makes money and profit. If you can answer those kinds of questions about your customer, you can have a better conversation. Chris, I think for my own practice, I'm going to rip off and deploy here. Research, R&D, rip off and deploy. Learn, role play, participate in the question and answer process. And then for every major sales call, reliving and coaching through those challenges. I think that's a huge takeaway that anybody with a pulse in sales can learn from and deliver. We got a minute or so left here. How can people get in touch with you? What are you working on now? What's happening in Dallas? Get everybody current with you so they can reach out to you if they've got a question about sales.
Yeah, so you can reach me at Chris at 360consultingdfw.com. You can also reach me at cgoade at salesacceleration.com. What we're working on now, I think the most exciting thing for me is the framework, Kevin, that you and I helped, in collaboration with others and with Sales Acceleration, put in play. And one of the things that I learned all throughout the business and the consulting that I've done is you've got to have a way to manage that sales organization. And I think the framework, the Sales Acceleration framework, really gives you exactly that. It gives you a framework to stay consistent. So we meet clients where they're at. So we're never going to pigeonhole anyone to any particular service or consulting scope of work. But I think that's the most exciting thing on my plate right now is just how this can be such a game changer. If you're a sales leader out there in a business, you need this framework. Whether you do it yourself or you already have one, I just go back to running large sales organizations in my career. I didn't even know that that's what I had, but that's what I had, right? I literally didn't call it that, didn't know exactly what it was. But we built a system. And so I think that's the most important thing for any business. I don't care if you're one person selling or you have 150 salespeople in a large sales organization, you got to have a system.
Completely agree with that. And Chris, once again, we are at the end of our time, but thank you very much. These podcasts have just flown by as we've had these conversations. So we appreciate that. For everybody listening out in podcast land, the contact information that Chris just mentioned, you didn't have to worry about driving down the road and pulling over or trying to scratch it down as you're driving down the road. Don't worry about it. It's in the podcast notes. Simply scroll down whatever podcast player you're using, scroll into the notes. All that contact information is there. You can also find all that information on LinkedIn because we always cross-post these to LinkedIn as well. So you can find all that information as well on LinkedIn. So thank you very much, Chris, for coming here and talking to us today and last week as well about how to be a better sales manager, how to be a better salesperson, how to be a business person. So we appreciate your willingness to lend your expertise to everybody else that's out there. So thank you for being on.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed it.
And that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining Kevin and Sean on Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Tune in every Tuesday, or when our podcast drops every Tuesday at 4:30, wherever you consume your podcast. And don't miss our monthly CEO workshop, where we unpack some of the big CEO questions facing your business. Until next time, we're looking forward to seeing you. Happy selling.